This is the Horse Radio Network. This is episode 27 of the Equestrian Legends Show on the Horse Radio Network, presented by Pessoa. Mildred Farris. I am Glenn McGeek, founder of the Horse Radio Network, and our guest this week is barrel racing pioneer and a true legend in the women's rodeo, Mildred Farris. But first, a word from Pessoa. The name Pessoa is legendary in equestrian circles. During his phenomenally successful career as a rider, Nelson Pessoa set his sights on creating the ultimate in saddle design. Not satisfied with the perfection of balance, aesthetics, and craftsmanship, Nelson's goal was to provide riders of every level the opportunity to train and compete in a true competition-level saddle, a saddle that would be an aid to their balance and riding style while offering comfortable fit for almost any horse. Most importantly, Nelson felt that the saddle was a tool that riders should not miss out on because of price. With these goals, the modern-day Pessoa was born, and it has come to encompass saddles, strap goods, horse boots, and blankets. That's right, Pessoa has some of the finest blankets on the market today. For example, their Pessoa Tundra 2100 denier turnout blanket is their toughest Pessoa blanket yet. This top-of-the-line, waterproof, breathable turnout blanket features a 2100 denier Teflon-coated ballistic weave ripstop outer shell. It has 300 grams of insulation with a 3M moisture-wicking, quick-drying lining. The patented closure system allows you to adjust the front closures just once and thereafter snap the blanket closed. Easy bend, elastic comfort neck gusset reduces shoulder rubbing and allows free neck and head movement. The removable double hook tail loop cover, adjustable leg straps, hidden elastic surcingle, action gullets, rust-proof hardware, and D-ring for optional neck rug attachment make this one of the finest, most technologically advanced blankets on the market today. Plus a 3-year warranty that covers fabric tearing because Pessoa backs the products that it sells. To learn more about Pessoa Tundra 2100 and all of the other fine products at Pessoa, ask your local retailer or visit them online at PessoaUSA.com. Mildred Farris was born in 1933 on a ranch in Texas and spent her childhood around horses. You will hear how that love of horses turned into a passion for rodeo. Mildred is an esteemed leader throughout the sport of rodeo. As a competitor, Farris was Texas Barrel Racing Association's champion barrel racer from 1955 to 1957. She earned a qualification 12 times to the National Finals Rodeo, was the runner-up to the world champion in 1959, 1960, 69, and in 1968, she earned the fastest time at the National Finals Rodeo. Active involvement in the Girls Rodeo Association, the predecessor to the Women's Professional Rodeo Association, meant that for 6 years Farris served as director, vice president, and president. The year 1955 marked her graduation from Sul Ross University and the year of her marriage to John Farris. In 1958, she joined the Girls Rodeo Association, and since 1960, Farris has served as rodeo secretary for many top producers, including Tommy Steiner, Harper & Morgan, Neil Gay, Jerry Nelson, and the Fort Worth Stock Show, among many others. Her dedication and contribution to the sport of rodeo as secretary is noteworthy. She was named Secretary of the Year 8 times by the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association and received the same title in 1998 and 2008 by the WPRA. Additionally, Farris has been inducted into 3 Halls of Fame. In 1994, the Sul Ross Rodeo Hall of Fame. In 2004, the Texas Rodeo Cowboy Hall of Fame. And in 2006, the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame. And more recently, in 2012, Mildred was one of the inductees into the National Cowgirl Hall of Fame. And we want to thank the National Cowgirl Hall of Fame for helping put this interview together. And now the Horse Radio Network is proud to introduce equestrian legend Mildred Farris. Well, hi, Mildred, and welcome to the Equestrian Legends Show, and congratulations for being nominated as an equestrian legend from all the horse world.
Thank you.
Well, I've been spending some time doing some research, and I've learned so much about the western side of the world that I didn't know before, and so much about barrel racing. And I'm so excited to hear about your life and how you were so instrumental in bringing barrel racing and the rodeo really to women and making it mainstream. Tell us a little bit, before we get into all of that, about your childhood, where you were born, and a little bit about your family and growing up.
Well, I was born in Andrews, Texas. I was born in the house that we lived in. I think my dad's one that delivered us. I'm a twin. I have a twin brother, and he's the one that delivered us. He came about 10 minutes before I did. and the twin brother and then a younger sister. And we were raised on a ranch in Andrews County.
And now, when you were growing up, were horses a big part of your life on the ranch?
Well, I've ridden all my life. I had my daddy on the ranch all the time, and I've ridden, all my life, I guess.
So were you doing ranch work initially on horses? Do you remember riding as a little kid, and were you just riding for fun, or were you helping out?
Oh no, we didn't ride for fun. We rode for work. We'd have to, round up the cattle and we'd have to, ride through them and make sure they was all right. And after, branding, or when a new calf was born, way back then, we had a lot of screw worms, and we had to, ride through them to make sure that we found the ones that had the screw worms so we could doctor them. So our riding was, was work. We never really just rode for fun. Of course, it was fun to ride, but most of our riding was for work.
And this was back, in the 1930s. You were born in the early 30s. So that was at the time of the Depression at that point, and then we came into World War II after that. What are your memories of, you're pretty young during the Depression. What are your memories of that time and World War II and what that was like where you grew up?
Well, I remember in the 50s when I was, a little older, that we had a real dry season, and we had to do an awful lot of feeding, and we'd move cattle kind of from one pasture to another, so we stayed real busy just, trying to take care of the cattle and kept them fed and watered and just looking after them.
Now, I assume the whole family was involved in the ranch work. Were all your siblings, did they all keep riding horses, or did some of them eventually give that up as they moved out?
Well, I'm the one that just kept on riding. Of the sisters, my twin brother still has a ranch, and he, has ranked off his life. And my younger brother, he's a CPA, and my younger sister taught school and was a grade school principal, and two of my older sisters taught school, and one of my sisters was just a housewife.
And now you were growing up and going to school and going to, junior high and then high school and eventually to college. Did you want to end up being in the horse world, or did you have other plans at that point?
Oh, no, I always kind of wanted to be in the horse world, and of course, barrel racing is what interested me. And so when I was in high school, I barrel raced some, but it wasn't until I got in college that I got a good horse, and then I really started rodeoing more in college. Then after I got married, that's what we did, was rodeo.
Now, back then, for those that aren't familiar with barrel racing and the history of it, it was a much different world than it is today, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. It was a group of girls from West Texas started in, I think, in 1945, and they really are the ones that got it started, and then they had some all-girl rodeos too, where they roped and rode bulls and rode bareback horses. But barrel race has always been the main event for the girls.
Now, so you weren't. So back then, and you're right. From my research, it shows in the middle 40s. There, back then, it was not part of the men's rodeo. It was a separate thing.
Well, yes, it started out just the girls, but then they finally started letting the girls just run barrels at the men's rodeos, which was back when it started was the RCA, which Rodeo Cowboys Association, and it has gradually grown into a bigger association where nearly all of the TRCA, the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association, has barrel races, and all of they have a lot of we call amateur associations, and they nearly all have barrel race. Nearly all rodeos have barrel race anymore.
And of course, the money's a little bit better today than it was back then, isn't it?
Oh, much better.
Yeah. Now, do you remember your first barrel racing horse?
Oh, yes.
What? Tell me about that horse.
Well, actually, he's kind of a bronc, and we saw him. Somebody was roping on him, and he was a good roping horse, except that he was, you're supposed to get back on your horse after you rope and tie your calf, and they always had trouble getting back on him. And Daddy saw him, and he I was looking for a barrel horse, and he said, "I've found a horse for you, but I don't know, if you can ride him or not." I said, "Well, let's try him." So I tried him, and he went ahead and bought him for me. And the first barrel race I went to, I won the barrel race on him. I rode him for a long time. I got him in. I had him in college, and I graduated from college in 1955, and I had him. Well, I quit riding in late 60s.
What was the horse's name, by the way?
His name was Lucky.
Lucky. And Lucky helped you win a few rodeos along the way, didn't he?
He was more thoroughbred, though, you could tell by looking at him.
And he helped you win a few rodeos along the way.
Oh, yeah, a bunch of them.
What was your degree in when you graduated? You went to Sul Ross State University. Where was that?
In Alpine, Texas.
Okay.
Down in the Big Bend. And physical education was not what I majored in. I had a degree in elementary and secondary.
So was the thought that if the if the competition thing didn't work out, you were going to become a teacher like your siblings?
I guess so.
Well, you didn't have that problem. As I see, you didn't have to go back to teaching at any point.
No. Well, I graduated in 1955, and we got married in 1955. And John was already rodeoing, and so that's what we've done all of our married life is rodeo. Because we both competed, but after we quit competing, then we were already working. I was working as a rodeo secretary and timer, and John was working as, shoot boss and just whatever needed to be done around the rodeo.
And how did you meet John?
At a rodeo.
Was it love at first sight?
We met in Stanford, Texas, and then that was in July. Then we married in May of the next year.
Was it love at first sight, Mildred, or did you remember when you first saw him and how he asked you out, or?
Well, actually, I had a date with one of his best friends, and then I don't know. We saw each other at rodeos, and they usually had a dance or something after the rodeo, and he asked me to go to the dance with him.
So basically, he stole you away from his best friend, is what I'm hearing.
Well, that was the only date I'd ever had with him, so I don't think he stole me away.
So that was back in mid 1950s, and you really started into barrel racing. It was the Texas Barrel Racing Association at that point, wasn't it?
Well, I joined the Texas Barrel Racing Association that year, and I won the Texas Barrel Racing Association Championship in 1955, 56, and 57. And then in 1958, I joined the Girls Rodeo Association, which, later became the Women's Professional Rodeo Association.
So tell us what your life was like back then. You had just gotten married to John. Were you on the road all the time?
Pretty much all the time. And we had 2 sons, and but I didn't, of course, I had both sons before. Well, I had one son before I joined the PRC, the Girls Rodeo Association, and then the first year that I joined the Girls Rodeo Association, my first rodeo was San Antonio, Texas, and I won it, and I made, I think, 5 rodeos that year before I had to quit riding, and I was still in the top 10 in the world. But, of course, we didn't have the finals at that time, so I didn't miss out on one of the finals.
When did the National Finals Rodeo, was that in existence back then, or did that come in later?
It started in 1957.
So it was right at the time when you were really heavily competing and doing very well at that point with Lucky.
Yes, that's right.
And where was the national? And the reason I'm asking about the National Final Rodeos, we're going to be talking a lot more about that as we continue here. Where did that begin? Where was the first National Finals Rodeo?
Well, the first one for the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association was held in Dallas, and it was there for 3 years, and then it moved to Los Angeles for 3, and then it moved to Oklahoma City. But the girls didn't, ride at their national finals, and we had our first one in Clayton, New Mexico. We had one in Dallas and one in Fort Worth, and when it moved to Oklahoma City, it was there for 2 years, and then they included the girls with the PRCA. And the barrel race has been with the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association finals ever since.
Now, has barrel racing changed much since those days? Is it has the way the competition is held changed a lot since those days?
Well, we still run the same pattern around the cloverleaf barrels, but back then there weren't near as many girls, competing, and then there's so many, good horses nowadays. We had good horses back then, but not as many as there are now. They're just back when I first started. You could kind of go to a rodeo and there'd be 4 or 5 girls there, and you say, well, they're gonna win, and sure enough they would. And now you can go to a rodeo and there'll be girls there that you've never even heard of that will win, and they're all mounted very well.
And what about crowds back then? Was it a big spectator sport like it is now, or was that slow to start, or?
Well, they've always had good crowds, but they didn't have to have as many people at the rodeos back then to be able to make a go of it. Where now it's everything's so expensive that if the crowds are down, they don't make much money, so everything's changed. And what am I saying? The crowds most places are real good. Sometimes, they're not, but as a whole, they're real good.
And I know you and John were traveling a lot back then, and back in the 50s, he competed in bareback riding and saddle bronc and bull riding and on through the rodeos as well. So you were traveling together. I assume that things were probably tough at times financially, being on the road like that all the time for you guys as well, early in your marriage.
We usually always made enough to keep going and make a living at it. But of course, expenses weren't near as great back then as it was as it is now. So even though we didn't make as much money, we didn't have to spend so much either.
Right. The cost of living was a little bit less back then. So you continued then competing, you and John both, competing into the 60s. In what? How did that progress through the 60s then?
Well, I got another horse. His name was King, and he was also a good horse. And in fact, I was runner-up to the World Championship in the WPRA on Lucky twice and on King once. So, I had 2 good horses.
You've qualified 12 times to the National Finals Rodeo, and you were runner-up to world champion of 59, 60, and 69, and then in 1968 earned a fastest time at the NFR.
Yes.
So you were having some good years in there.
Oh, yeah. I had some real good years. Sure did.
Now, this is also a time when your kids were pretty little. Were they traveling with you at this point?
In the summertime, they traveled with us, and then when school started, they stayed with their grandparents.
Was that hard?
Well, it was, but, I knew they'd been taken care of, so, and that was our job, so it was just something that we had to work out. And then if rodeos were close around, they would sometimes, get to come and be with us over the weekend or something, so.
Did either of your sons take up riding?
Well, one of them rode for a while, but then he didn't last long, and the youngest one rode. He hurt his knee and had to have surgery, and then he just quit. Neither one of them rodeo anymore. Yeah.
That's what's so amazing, too, about your careers, you and John, is that is what, obviously injuries are a big part of anything we do in the horse world. And can affect our careers can shorten careers. But you guys seem to get through all those years, and I'm sure there were some injuries along the way.
Well, he had some injuries, but nothing major, like like a broken ankle or something like that. But it wasn't. He never did get really serious injuries.
At what point then did you start to decrease the amount of competing and then really go into a second phase here where you were starting to work with the rodeos and became a secretary and different things over time? At what point did that happen?
Well, I was already working as secretary before I quit riding, but I quit, barrel racing in about 1971, and John had quit riding, but he was, roping some still. So, and then we just gradually got out of it and just, worked the rodeos, like the secretary and timer, and he worked the shoots and all.
Before we get into your secretary years, I do have a question. When you were traveling, what do you remember as the highlight of really being on the road like that, and what do you remember as kind of the struggles of being on the road? What were the struggles of that?
Well, I guess the biggest problem was sometimes, that was before all the cars were really air conditioned and it was, really hot and I don't know, we just didn't think about all that. We just knew we had to go and just, got on the road and got went.
And that was before living quarters and campers too. Was it? Where would you stay at shows?
We'd have to get a motel room, and sometimes that wasn't easy. Sometimes we'd have to kind of, double up with other couples that was going, and sometimes the motels weren't all that nice. But, you just do the best you can and go on.
There's some rodeo competitors today that would say the same thing. So.
Yeah.
I don't think that's changed through the years. And then, what are the real highlights for you? What are the things that stand out in those times when you were competing on the road that was the thing that you just couldn't wait to do?
Oh, well, I don't know. Of course, I stayed so busy, after I started secretary and running everything. I didn't. But I guess one of the main things that impressed me more than anything was all the people that we met on the, rodeo, and we went back to places all the time that we'd meet people and not see them maybe until the next year again, and that was pretty neat, getting to meet all the people.
So let's go into your secretary years now that you've got, you're starting to wind down on your competition. You were a secretary for a while. What does a secretary do? For those that don't know, what does a secretary do at a rodeo? What's that involve?
Well, of course, when I first started secretarying, the secretary had to take the entries by phone herself, and we had to draw all the positions for the contestants and draw the stock for them, and we'd have to do that as soon as the entries closed, and then they would call back to see when they were, up, what night they were to compete in, and then we keep records of, everything that times and timed events and the scores in the riding events, and take the entry fees and do the paying off, and we'd have to get the results and everything together and send into the PRCA, Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. And but nowadays we have the computer, and we have what we call Procom, and the contestants call that office to make their entries, and they do all the drawing, and we get our information on the computer. But we still have to, take your fees and pay them off, and
It's an important job for the rodeo, and kids today are spoiled because they can just look on the internet. They don't have to keep calling the various places they go. They can check on the internet what their draws are. So it's changed a lot since you've seen it change full circle.
Yes, I have. Yeah, we send all this information into the Rodeo Association, and then they put it on the internet, so they don't really have to call us back to find out if they've won, or they call Procom to find out when they're up and all that. So that's really helped us a bunch. But we still have to keep up with all the times and scores and the payoffs and all that. And there's so many more contestants than there used to be, and a lot of places we have flack that last anywhere from 2 hours to maybe 6 or 7 hours. So there's still an awful lot to do.
And then along the way, too, from 65 to 71, you were involved with the WPRA, or the Women's Professional Rodeo Association, in various roles during that time. And that was at a time when it was switching from the Girls Rodeo Association to the WPRA, and it was really a growth time. You were there, when it was starting to grow and get serious at that point.
Well, I was... First, I was a director in the Girls Rodeo Association, and then I was vice president and then president. And during all that time that I was in there, we used to, if you hit a barrel, it was you just had no time, and so this happened when I was president, and someone came up with the idea of having an electric eye, and so we started using that. But we also on the 5-second penalty, we passed a rule that if you hit a barrel, it would be a 5-second penalty instead of just a no time. And that has helped a lot, especially back then we had some rodeos where I know we went to Chicago and we had 10 runs. And if you hit a barrel, you were just out of the average, didn't win anything there. But like at the finals now, it's 10 performances, and if you hit a barrel, you get 5 seconds put on your time, and by the time the 10 runs are over, there are girls that hit a barrel or maybe even 2 barrels and still place an average. So it doesn't, by having that rule, it doesn't take you completely out.
Do you remember what it was like to go to your first National Finals rodeo?
The first one I went to was in Oklahoma City, and we were treated very well. It went over, the barrel race went over, very well.
Now, you've been nominated Secretary of the Year many, many times, and have been working in the rodeo industry for really since 1955. In one capacity or another. What have you seen change with rodeo over that period of time? What are the things that really stand out for you?
Well, the payoff is one of the main things, and there's we have sponsors, and they help tremendously, and it's just so many more contestants, and
the popularity and the audience is much, much bigger?
Oh, yeah. Well, and, they see it on television some, and they just know more about what's going on, and, they see the names, and they get familiar with the names. It's like, they're doing football or any other sports, and, but the National Finals rodeo has been after the first 2 or 3 years in Oklahoma City, it was a sellout, and since it's been in Vegas, it's been a sellout every year. So it's.
And you were involved with that for a long time, weren't you, in the National Finals rodeo?
Yes. After it went to Oklahoma City, Ken McSpadden was the general manager, and he wanted someone to carry the American flag, so he asked me to, and I wore white clothes every performance, and he would talk about the flag, and the background music was Old Glory, and as he talked, and I carried the flag around the arena, and the Old Glory song playing, it brought a lot of tears to people's eyes, because it was, really something, and it was just, came from the heart. Everybody loved it.
And then you continued to do that for a long time.
Yes. Well, I carried the flag at, nearly all the rodeos where I went to. So that's something I've done a long time.
Do you still ride today?
No. I haven't ridden in quite a while now.
Do you still have horses in the yard?
Well, no. We did have up until a couple of years ago, and unfortunately, the last one we had, passed away, and we never did get another one. Sometimes I kind of miss riding, but then on the other hand, I really don't. I've rode all my life until I quit, and I guess you can say when I hung up my rope for good.
Well, do you have, we always talked about in the horse world, we talk about our lifetime horse, the one horse that we had that we really think was the horse of our lifetime. Do you have that horse?
When I was at home riding on the range, I had a horse. He was a black horse, and I loved that horse. And a lot of people couldn't get along with him, but he was my favorite range horse. And then, of course, after I got lucky, he was a good horse, but he was kind of bronky. Not anybody, you couldn't put a kid on him. And he was pretty high-strung, and so not just everybody could ride him. I mean, as far as just getting on him just to ride, for pleasure. And then when I got King, he was a pleasure to ride. He was like riding in a rocking chair. He was so smooth, but they were both good horses, but they had different attitudes, that's for sure.
Now, you have been inducted into, as best I can tell, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, 3 Hall of Fames, and starting in the 2000s, and you and John have been inducted into Hall of Fames together as well. That's quite an accomplishment.
In 1994, I was inducted into the Ross Hall of Fame. That was, college. And then...
I know in 2004, you were both inducted into Texas Rodeo Cowboy Hall of Fame, right?
And also in the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame in 2006, John and I.
And weren't you the first couple to ever be inducted like that?
We were the first couple to ever be inducted.
That's quite an accomplishment, too. And I mean, you've been married for a long time, over 50 years at this point.
Yeah. And then we were, in 2010, we were inducted in the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City.
And then in 2012, you were inducted into the National Cowgirl Museum Hall of Fame, and you carried the flag that year, too, at the NFR, didn't you?
Well,
for them.
I carried the flag at well, I haven't been inducted yet. I'm going to be in the
oh, that's right. You're an inductee at this point. Yes.
In October.
Yes.
But I carried the flag I think it was in '97 at the National Finals Rodeo in Las Vegas for the representing the Cowgirl Hall of Fame.
Gotcha. And what if you're looking back and if you were to give advice to girls coming up today, what would you tell them? Would you tell them that this is something they should really pursue if they want to make the horse world a career? This is something that they should do. Should they go to college? If they're debating, should I go to college or should I go on the road? What would you tell them?
Well, that kind of depends on if you happen to have a good horse at a certain time, that's when you want to pursue it, and of course some girls are lucky enough to not have just one good horse, and, so they can continue. But I don't, they have the college rodeos now, so I think it's a good idea to, go to college, and you can rodeo from your college and then still have plenty of time to, turn professional if that's what you want to do. But, sometimes if you have a good horse, you have to go when your horse is, is at his best, unless you're lucky enough. So the girls nowadays usually have more than one horse. And back when I was going, we were lucky to have one good horse. So, but if they want to pursue a career in barrel racing, it's a year-round job. You have to work at it, just like any other job,
Now, I have a couple questions that we ask at the end of interviews with our equestrian legends, and a couple of them don't have anything to do with horses, actually. Did you have any passions or hobbies or things that were not horse-related over the years?
No, not really.
No?
I've always just, either worked on the ranch or when we started rodeo, we were just rodeoing, and we've always been involved, with the horses or, something like that, and never really had time because we were gone most of the time, so I didn't have time to do a whole lot of other things. Now, I did, I could sew, so I made a lot of their, when we worked for Tommy Steiner in the 60s, I made a lot of our costumes, and so I guess that was one of my hobbies, was to sew, but I don't even sew anymore.
What would you say you're most proud of with your career?
Just that we had a good job, and we were able to go every place together and work together. And then when we got, in the halls of fame, we were put in there together, so it's just been, a family deal all the time. And occasionally we would go someplace, by ourselves or, with someone else, but most of the time we were always, working together.
Now, not a lot of couples can do that, you realize. It's not something every couple can do successfully.
I guess so.
You led me into my next question. What's the secret to being married for 52 years?
It's 57 years now.
Oh, 57, okay.
But, you have to work at it, and you have to, you have to like what you're doing, and I think, I know some couples probably couldn't work together, but before we got married, that's what we both did, and that's what we both wanted to do. So, it's we've had some, hard times, but we always managed through them, and have to work at it, and
Well, 2 more quick questions for you about you. What kind of music do you like?
Old country western mostly.
Yeah, and how about books? Do you read? What types of books?
Well, I don't read a lot. I like to read, but I like to read the Western magazines and, that kind of stuff, and kind of getting into reading a little bit more because I'm home more. But
well, we certainly appreciate you joining us today. What an interesting and fruitful life you've had, and obviously, a real forerunner for women in rodeo, and really did help lead the way there. I think that every woman in rodeo today can thank you for being a pioneer in that world.
Well, we tried to make it better as we went along, because back then we were the ones that kind of got it all to going, and so we wanted to try to make it as good as we could for, the ones that was coming up behind us, and we still do. We, still want it to be better, and I think it will be, but everybody has to work at it, and that's the whole thing, everybody has to work and work together.